Amid heightened tensions between Tokyo and Beijing, Japan and China are both expanding economic cooperation with Azerbaijan, a dynamic that reflects Azerbaijan's growing geo-economic importance at the crossroads of multiple great power interests. Japan's outreach builds on broader Central Asia investment initiatives, while China remains a key bilateral partner across trade, transport and technology. Let's bring in our guest, Ahmad Hashemi, Director at the Global Policy Institute from Washington, D.C., United States. Ahmed, welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me.
Now let's start with context. Why is Azerbaijan attracting economic cooperation offers from both Japan and China at a time when Tokyo and Beijing themselves are grappling with diplomatic and strategic tensions?
Well, this approach stems from Azerbaijan's perspective, or Azerbaijan's approach to foreign policy, foreign relations, which is stemming from the idea of multi-vectorism or multilateralism, and a firm believer of a multilateral world. So this is one reason why Azerbaijan is open to do business, to cooperate, to expand its relationships, its ties with sometimes, let's say, opposing forces or countries that are not necessarily in great terms with each other, including China and Japan. We can also have a look at it from the perspective of a great game, rather a great power competition. And we all know that China is a rising superpower. Japan, though declining, is still a third or fourth global power. And this is very important for Azerbaijan to have a good relationship with both nations. And also another point that I would like to mention is the Azerbaijan's ascension to the status of middle power. Azerbaijan, before the liberation of Karabakh and surrounding regions, was in a different world, in a different geopolitical landscape. But after the liberation, we see that Azerbaijan now has ascended to a middle power position, even though its population, its size, maybe not in the middle power status, but we said Azerbaijan's geopolitical situation, geographical location allows it to play a role in defiance of Russia and Iran, by providing a transportation route, east-west transportation route that doesn't go through either of the countries, Russia and Iran.
And Japan's engagement is part of a broader Central Asia strategy and investments in green energy, technology and minerals. Does Azerbaijan play a strategic role in diversifying Japan's external economic track?
The short answer is yes. Japan approaches Azerbaijan through the lens of economic security and supply chain resilience, specifically to balance the influence of other major powers in Eurasia, Russia and China. So within this perspective, Japan sees Azerbaijan as a potential partner in energy, in a middle corridor, as well as in even non-oil sector integration and geopolitical balancing. If I briefly mention, dive deeper to one of these outlines. For example, in terms of energy, Japan is a pioneer in green hydrogen and renewables, and as well as in decarbonization. And in both areas, Azerbaijan has something to offer, and this creates a ground for mutually beneficial cooperation between Azerbaijan and Japan. And also, when it comes to middle corridor, for example, this is perceived by Japan as a strategic pivot, because again, as I mentioned earlier, this bypasses the Russia and Iran route. When we deal with east-west transportation corridor, as well as this this is even beyond and above the boundaries of Azerbaijan, because we know that Central Asian countries, they are landlocked countries, and Japan has invested enormously in their infrastructure, in their energy, and in their private sector. And again, Azerbaijan provides this route, especially after the resolution of the Zangezur corridor and issues surrounding it. This allows Japan to have this connectivity via Central Asian markets all the way to Europe and global markets.
And China already has strong economic, transport and trade ties with Azerbaijan. How does Beijing's approach differ in scale or intent from Tokyo's outreach?
Again, very briefly, they have differences of mentalities, differences of approaches. I mean, Japan and China. If I briefly mention a couple of those, if I compare these differences, for example, in terms of China's approach, China's primary framework for this cooperation is Belt and Road Initiative. But for Japan, it's Free and Open Indo-Pacific framework, or FOIP framework. So BRI versus FOIP. Or in terms of economic role, China is the largest source of imports for Azerbaijan. But Japan is the source of high-tech, actually the high-tech investor and energy partner. And in terms of logistics, we see that China wants to maximize the investments in the logistics within the framework of BRI, again, Belt and Road Initiative. But Japan prefers a more niche type of investments, for example, enhancing quality and security. And when it comes to key sectors, EVs, electrical vehicles, port terminals, railway hardwares, these are some of the areas that China is interested in investing in Azerbaijan. But when it comes to Japan, Japan is rather interested, again, as I mentioned, green hydrogen, AI, renewables, and securing route to EU markets. This is China's strategic goal when it comes to its ties with Azerbaijan. But when it comes to Japan shares the same idea, but also China seeks to counterbalance actually Russia's and China's influence. So Japan rather sees Azerbaijan as a platform, as a source that it can diversify its foreign policy, as well as its strategic goals, as well as its economic ties.
Ahmad, it was a pleasure talking to you this evening. Thank you very much for your analysis.
Thank you for having me.